This is a quiet story, told slowly. There's nothing you need to do, and nothing you need to remember. You can listen closely, or let the words fade into the background as you rest. The story will move gently, without sudden moments, and it will stay with you whether you're awake or drifting off. Tonight's story is The Orchard, after midnight. The orchard was quiet in the way only places without witnesses could be. Rows of apple trees stood in gentle alignment, their branches dark against the night sky, leaves barely stirring in the light breeze that moved through them. The ground beneath was uneven, packed earth softened by grass and fallen fruit left to return to soil. Above, the moon held steady, not bright enough to cast sharp shadows, but present enough to guide a careful walk. A narrow path ran between the rows, worn smooth by years of use. It was not marked, not maintained in any official sense, yet it persisted, shaped by repetition rather than intention. Boots had passed this way, night after night, season after season, until the earth learned where weight would fall. Samuel Reed followed it, without needing to look down. He carried a small lantern, its light low and warm, cast in a soft circle that moved with him rather than ahead of him. He preferred it that way. Bright light disrupted the orchard's balance at night, made the trees seem unfamiliar. The lantern was enough to show where his feet landed and where the next tree stood waiting. He walked slowly, not because the path demanded caution, but because there was no reason to hurry. The orchard did not close. It did not measure time in hours or productivity. It moved according to its own cycles, and Samuel had learned, over many years, to match them. He paused beside one of the older trees and rested his hand against its trunk. The bark was rough and cool beneath his palm, patterned with ridges he could recognize without seeing them. This tree had been here longer than he had, longer than the house at the edge of the land, longer than most of the habits he carried now without question. The lantern's light caught the lower branches, revealing apples still clinging there, small and firm, not yet ready. Others lay scattered on the ground, bruised or split, already claimed by insects and rot. Samuel did not mind. Not every apple was meant to be gathered. Some belonged to the soil. He continued on, the lantern swinging gently at his side. Midnight walks through the orchard had begun as work. Years ago, when he first took responsibility for the land, he had checked the trees at all hours, worried about frost, pests, weather turning without warning. He had paced the rows with a tightness in his chest, listening for signs of damage, trying to anticipate every possible loss. The orchard had taught him something different. Most nights now, there was nothing to fix, nothing to adjust. The trees held their fruit. The ground held its moisture. The air moved as it should. Samuel's presence was not required, yet he came anyway. The walk had become less about vigilance and more about companionship. The lantern flickered once as a breeze moved through, then steadied. Samuel adjusted his grip slightly and kept walking. The sound of his boots was soft, absorbed by earth and grass. Somewhere beyond the orchard, an owl called, the sound low and unhurried. It did not disturb the stillness. It belonged to it. He reached the far end of the rows and stopped. From here, he could see the faint outline of the farmhouse, its windows dark, its shape familiar even in low light. He had lived there long enough that it no longer felt like a structure. It felt like part of the land, another thing that endured quietly. Samuel turned and began the walk back, retracing his steps without thought. The orchard did not change direction depending on which way he faced. It accepted him equally, whether he moved deeper into it or away. As he walked, his breathing slowed to match his pace. Thoughts rose and fell without forming patterns. He did not review the day. He did not plan for morning. The orchard did not require reflection. It asked only that he be present, and even that felt optional. When he reached the tree he had touched earlier, he paused again. The lantern light revealed the same bark, the same branches, unchanged by his absence of a few minutes. Samuel rested his hand there once more, not out of superstition, but out of familiarity. This was the hour the orchard belonged most fully to itself. He was content to walk within it, unseen and unremarkable. One more quiet thing moving through the dark. The orchard changed very little as the night deepened. The air cooled by degrees so small they were felt more than measured. Dew gathered quietly on leaves and grass, softening the ground underfoot. The moon moved its light slowly, shifting the orchard's shadows without altering their meaning. Samuel walked on, the lantern's glow steady at his side. He stopped near a younger tree, one he had planted himself years earlier. Its trunk was thinner, its branches still learning how to hold their weight. Samuel remembered the morning he had set it into the ground, hands sore from digging, soil dark beneath his nails. He had not known then whether the tree would take. He had planted it anyway, because that was what the land asked of him. Effort, without guarantee. The tree had grown. He had learned over time to trust that kind of outcome. Not certainty, but continuation. The orchard was full of evidence that not everything needed constant attention to survive. Some things improved when left alone. Samuel moved on, passing between the rows where the ground dipped slightly. Fallen apples lay scattered here, their sweetness already returning to earth. The smell was faint but present, a quiet reminder of cycles that did not rush themselves. He had once felt frustrated by that waste, had counted losses too closely. Now he saw it differently. What was not gathered still belonged. He remembered nights when sleep would not come, when the house felt too still and his thoughts too loud. Those were the nights he first walked the orchard at this hour, not with purpose, but with restlessness. He had moved among the trees then, with an unsettled energy, lantern swinging too fast, steps uneven. He had expected the walking to resolve something. It had not. What it had done was slow him. The orchard did not answer questions. It did not offer reassurance in words or signs. It responded only by remaining itself, unchanged by his worry. Over time, that steadiness had worked its way into him. His thoughts had learned to move more, like the trees grew. Gradually, without insistence, Samuel reached the fence at the edge of the land and leaned against it briefly. Beyond lay open fields, dark and indistinct. He did not feel drawn to cross them. The orchard was enough. It held boundaries that made sense. The lantern's flame wavered again, then settled. He checked it out of habit, though he knew it would last the walk. He had trimmed the wick carefully earlier in the evening, preparing it with the same care he gave to tools and soil. Preparation, he had learned, was different from control. One respected limits. The other pretended they did not exist. He turned back toward the center of the orchard, the rows opening to receive him. The trees stood in quiet patience, their branches overlapping slightly in places, creating sheltered pockets of darker air. Samuel moved through them without hesitation. He knew where roots rose near the surface, where the ground sloped, where to place his feet without thought. A breeze moved through the leaves again, this time a little stronger. The sound travelled across the orchard in a soft wave, then faded. Samuel stopped and listened until the air settled once more. The stillness that followed felt deeper for having been disturbed. He realized standing there that the orchard no longer felt like work to him. It felt like a record, not of achievements or yields, but of time spent paying attention. Each tree marked a season he had lived through. Each path marked a choice, repeated until it became habit. He resumed walking, the lantern's circle of light drifting over bark and grass. The orchard did not reflect him back in any meaningful way. It did not mirror his moods or respond to his presence. That too was a kind of comfort. He did not need to be seen to belong. As midnight passed without announcement, Samuel felt his body loosen. The tension he had carried earlier in the evening, the small, unremarked tightness behind his eyes and shoulders eased. He had not set out to rest, yet rest had found him all the same. The orchard continued to hold its quiet. Samuel continued to walk, no longer counting steps or time, content to be one more slow movement among many that did not require explanation. The lantern's light had softened by the time Samuel reached the center of the orchard again. The flame was still steady, but its edges blurred slightly, the glow less defined than before. He welcomed that. The orchard did not need to be fully revealed to be known. Shapes were enough. Presence was enough. He slowed his steps without deciding to. His body seemed to recognize that the walk was nearing its natural end, the way a conversation sometimes eased into silence without needing a closing sentence. The air felt cooler now, settling against his skin with a calm persistence. Dew gathered more heavily on the grass, dampening the sound of his boots even further. Samuel stopped beneath a tree whose branches curved lower than most, their leaves forming a loose canopy overhead. He lifted the lantern slightly, just enough to see the fruit still hanging there. The apples were small and firm, weeks away from readiness. He did not reach for them. Some things were better left untouched until they decided for themselves. He rested the lantern at his feet and leaned back against the trunk. The bark pressed solidly into his shoulders, grounding him. Above, the leaves shifted faintly, making a sound like breath moving through fabric. He closed his eyes and listened, not for anything in particular, but for the way the orchard held together as a whole. There had been a time when he would have worried about nights like this, nights when nothing was accomplished, when no visible progress could be recorded. He had once believed that care only counted if it produced something measurable. The orchard had corrected him slowly, without argument. Growth, it turned out, did not announce itself. It happened underground, in roots extending into dark soil, in branches strengthening invisibly, in seasons passing without spectacle. Samuel had learned to trust that kind of movement, both here and within himself. He opened his eyes and picked up the lantern. The light steadied again as he adjusted his grip. He turned toward the farmhouse, its shape barely visible now, a darker shadow against the night. He did not feel reluctance about leaving. The orchard did not close behind him. It remained exactly as it was, holding its quiet, whether he walked within it or not. The path back felt shorter, though he knew it was not. Familiarity did that. It softened distance and removed effort. Samuel walked with the same unhurried pace, aware of where the ground dipped and rose, aware of the slight turn before the final row of trees opened. When he reached the edge of the orchard, he paused once more. He turned and looked back. Lantern held low, allowing the trees to remain mostly in shadow. The orchard did not present itself as a single shape. It existed as many small presences, layered and calm, waiting for morning without impatience. Samuel nodded once, a gesture so small it was more felt than seen. Inside the farmhouse, the air was cooler still. He set the lantern down and extinguished it carefully, the flame disappearing without drama. Darkness filled the room, complete but not heavy. He moved through the space by memory, hands finding familiar surfaces, feet knowing where to land. When he lay down, sleep arrived without resistance. His body settled easily, as though the walking had aligned something that no longer needed attention. The orchard remained with him, not as image or thought, but as rhythm, a sense of time passing without pressure. Outside, the trees held their fruit and their silence. Beneath the soil, roots continued their slow work. Nothing hurried. Nothing was required. By morning, there would be dew on the grass and light between the leaves. There would be work again, and waiting, and seasons turning at their own pace. For now, it was enough to know that growth did not always need watching. Some things were still becoming, even in the dark.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you for supporting the channel.